our YouTube followers, which is a much larger and more dynamic group. So welcome everyone. We are so excited that you have decided to join us. We are talking to the incredibly epic and amazing Dr. Andrew Wakefield, who defies categorization. A lot of people know him as the MMR doctor, but he's also an incredibly dynamic author, filmmaker, activist whose work has been absolutely profoundly life-changing for, I would say, I would have said thousands, but I think we're finally at the platform that it's millions. So I feel pretty confident that he'll be joining us back in a moment.
Hi, everybody. I see you guys out there. Thanks for joining us. So I'll just start chatting. I was very lucky to see the whole movie. Lauren is in the trailer. She's not in the movie, but so I'm talking about the movie. So I saw the movie the other day, and I'm really excited. I think it's going to do great things. I think it's very informative. I was surprised, Andy, when I don't think you're actually really even in the movie till like an hour. I mean, there's just so much information. I think this is going to be an amazing tool for people for a very long time about vaccine court.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, it's been an extraordinary saga, this one. It's really, I don't appear in it because it's not a movie about me, but there was just that little hint of what needed to be said to lead into the next part. But it's a story about one of the most extraordinary episodes in history. I mean, it's a story of how bad policy about unsafe vaccines hurts children everywhere. And it's also about something very different, which is much more empowering, allows us to approach this movie in an entirely different way, allows us to approach this whole subject in an entirely different way. And that is the extraordinary power of maternal intuition. It's about something that is far more powerful than man could have contrived in any other way. It's about how the insight of a mother, the instinct of a mother, leads her to question the whole paradigm of vaccination safety, leads her to do the kind of research that we should have done or could have done, or in some cases may even have done ourselves to some extent, and then come to a point where she is able to make an informed choice about what she does for her new baby. And that is a very positive message. That is something that people can use, that people can look inside themselves to this extraordinary inner authority and not defer to all the things that we hear, the darkness on the news, the division, the hate, the acrimony, all of the things that are going on around us are an external authority that we need to get away from. We need to find something different. And I think now is a perfect time in history. We could not have predicted. We finished production of this film in November. We hadn't even heard of COVID at that time. So we had no idea that this was going to happen. But of course, the number of people now who are focused on the idea of it's not just mandatory vaccination for children, but we're faced with the prospect of mandatory vaccination for adults everywhere in the world. And suddenly it takes on a whole new meaning. So this is far from being a sort of dark time. This is a time of awakening and enlightenment. And I think this film really comes at a perfect time for that. One has to believe that there are forces at work which have conspired to produce this moment in history that allow people now to look back at the past, look back at where we came from, and therefore see where we're going and make their decisions accordingly.
It's exciting to hear you say that, because it is such a time, one, I think, only needs go to social media to feel that sense of complete and total gloom and doom, end of the world. And I think those of us who've been in this for decades really are in a place of utter excitement because we understand that this is a necessary piece. This has to happen. It's revolution, and it's always ugly. And I remember meeting you years ago in 2013. The way I met Andy, guys, is we were initially going to be working on a film profiling my son's recovery with Dr. Krigsman. But during that time, we met an incredible young man by the name of Alex Bortolakis, who is no longer with us. You may have heard of the film Who Killed Alex Bortolakis. And that, Andy, I think that was your first film, correct?
It was, absolutely. It started off, as you know, we were doing a series for the Sky TV network, which was a sort of before, during, and after, and taking broken families where the child was injured and was in the hands of the psychiatrists and not being investigated appropriately, and the family was broken. And basically what we did is we were getting these children properly investigated and then showing the recovery, not just of the child, but of the family. And then, of course, it all changed. And it changed because you and others introduced us to this child in 4-point locked restraints in a Chicago teaching hospital who'd been there for a very long time and put on a total of, I think, 28 psychotropic medications we calculated in the end. One after the other, each trying to offset the side effects of the last one. It was a complete nightmare of medical failure, a litany of the failure of medicine to understand this condition. Of course, Alex was a big kid, he was mute, he was aggressive, and each of these drugs was making him worse and worse and worse. And so you guys helped us get him to New York, where we got him investigated, and he had inflammatory bowel disease and he was on the right treatment. But going back to Chicago, he had no, I think his mother was estranged from her husband, and therefore she had nowhere to live. And so they were going from hotel to motel. And every time he heard a siren, he would have a meltdown. They were coming to take him away again, and he would destroy the room and they'd be thrown out, and things deteriorated. They spiraled out of control. He fell back into the hands of the psychiatrists, was taken off his GI medication, put up back on psychotropics, and had a meltdown. When we saw him again, that was in Lutheran Hospital in the pediatric intensive care unit. And he was back in 4-point locked restraints. He was on 2 intravenous and 1 intramuscular sedations. And we went to try and find somewhere to get him out and get him into somewhere safe. And halfway through that week, his insurance ran out. And so they took out the IV, took off his restraints, and put him out on the street. And a week later, he was dead at the hands of his mother. She tried to then take her own life in this murder-suicide pact. And it was absolutely tragic. But we had all this extraordinary footage, this footage that told the real story, a real story of a mother who loved her child so much she could no longer bear to witness his suffering. They were beyond tired. You saw them. They were unbelievably broken.
Well, what
by
I
the medical
find,
system.
Yeah, and what I find, when Gina and I went in to address it, because, Gina Reed of Autism is Medical and we went to the hospital initially and we had our science. So what I find so intriguing and exciting about this now time is because then when we had our stacks and stacks of papers, hey, why aren't we evaluating this child's methylation? Why aren't we looking at what's going on from a mitochondrial perspective? Why are you feeding him 18 hamburgers a day without even understanding why you're doing that? And at that time, to your point about a mother's intuition, they literally looked at us like we were insane. And we were very calmly and logically pointing out, this isn't working. This young man with the 2 guards at the door that you're letting walk around naked, who's spitting on people and slapping people, what is the end goal? How are we going to come together as a medical community and as a maternal community trying to protect the children to resolve this issue? So it's quite thrilling to me that we are now in a place where your film has been made and the science is going to be readily available, and the questions are going to no longer be, looked at in such, it always went to hysteria. There was never a bridge of, wow, these women seem very concerned about a child that's not their own. I wonder what would make them get involved in a situation like this. There was no inquiry, there was just silencing.
And of course, and you came from a position of experience because you'd experienced this in one way or another with your own children. So you were coming from a position of knowledge, a knowledge that they didn't have. They were completely at a loss for what to do. And that story had, as you know, a very interesting ending, which brings us to the idea of the power of film to communicate to people. And that was, of course, after that event, that tragic event, she was incarcerated and in prison for 4 years, but without having yet been taken to court and sentenced. And her lawyer called me, I think, just before Christmas 2017 and said, I've been contacted by the state's prosecutor who was responsible for charging and prosecuting Dorothy Spordelakis. And he said to me, I understand a film has been made about this story. We'd like to see it. So I sent him, the lawyer said to me, I sent him my DVD, my copy of the DVD, and he watched it. And he called me back 2 weeks later and he said, we've now watched this film. We can no longer prosecute this case in the same way. She will be released from prison next week. Now, that was the first time in American legal history that had ever happened, that someone's life sentence effectively was commuted on the basis of a film telling what really happened. Not this crazy mother who hated her child, which is what the media wanted to portray, but the truth about the abject failure of the medical system, the insight of mothers, the love of a mother for her child, and the power of film was right there. And that was really, for me, that led to VAX, because then you thought, okay, if we can do this for one person, then we can do it for a whole lot of people. And then that opportunity came along with William Thompson and the CDC fraud. And then I decided, well, now the time has come to really upset the apple cart and make a film about the 1986 National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act.
That's spectacular. So Karen and I were both talking earlier about that, because it feels like our community is remarkably divided on the act itself, on the court, the proceedings, how you go about reporting something to VAERS. What is your sentiment on all of that?
Yes, what a huge question that is. Where does it all begin? Firstly, there are fundamental problems with the Act was set up to do three things, which tie into what you've been talking about. And one is to give a degree of liability protection to the industry for harm done by their vaccines. That was just one part of it. The other part was to monitor vaccine injury, to assess the true rate of vaccine injury, to conduct science to make vaccines safer, and to therefore protect children. And the other part, the third part, was to compensate children who'd been injured. The first part has been an extraordinary success for the industry. They have made a fortune out of the fact that they have no liability. They've been removed from the constraints of the free market, that a bad, unsafe product has floated to the surface against all of the principles of the free market and been allowed to thrive. Added on to that, now you mandate the market. So you have a mandatory market, you have no liability, all you can do is profit. But the other two elements of that is making vaccines safer by doing the right science and by compensating children who have been the victims of the CDC's war on infectious disease, have been a complete failure. And you and I know that the system set up that Congress wanted, like VAERS, the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, record fewer than 1% of the adverse reactions. And in the knowledge that that was the case, in the certain knowledge that that was the case, based upon the science that was commissioned, the CDC abandoned the science any further, refused to answer calls from Harvard Pilgrim researchers, and never explored that issue again, because they identified a reaction rate that was far too much, far too great, far too shocking ever to share with the American public. And then they sabotaged the opportunity for children to be compensated. And so they revised the table of compensable injuries. They took residual seizure disorder, encephalopathy, regressive encephalopathy removed from the table so that fewer and fewer and fewer children would be compensated. And the reasons for doing that were deliberate. They were that if they compensated children, if they were seen to compensate children for these injuries, it would tell the public that vaccines can do that, and they didn't want that to happen. And so they faked it, they lied it, and they conspired. The federal agencies that were responsible for enacting the policies of Congress and the industry conspired to deny children compensation. And all the time, putting new vaccines onto the market, making it more complex, more dangerous, not conducting the science, to the point where we now are in a catastrophic situation and faced with this brand new agenda of untested, novel strategy, Frankenstein viral vaccines put onto the market and mandated for everyone. And people are apparently clamoring for it. Sorry, go on, Karen.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm like so excited to talk about this because I'm on the Advisory Commission for Childhood Vaccines, and we meet quarterly. We meet twice in person. So in March, my very first meeting, I have to say, the chair, Dr. Cody Meisner, he said to me on the meeting, on the phone, my very first meeting, and I really groomed for this. He said, "No child ever dies from vaccine injury." And I was so shocked. I just have the phone and I'm waiting for someone to step in. So this is a board of 9 people, the NIH, the NIAID, the CDC, the FDA, all of those people are at this meeting. And that kind of kicked off just how much work I had to do. And I've been super supported by a lot of very smart people. But just in March, when I was at this meeting, I talked to them about that Pilgrim study. Because, you know, for me, it's very frustrating, obviously, as a parent who's gone through vaccine court. They use this VAERS when they want it, and then they say, oh, it's not really good when they don't want it. So it depends on how their stats are based and how it turns out how they use VAERS. So I asked them, I said, well, what about the Harvard Pilgrim study? So this is the same, NIH, NIAID, CDC, FDA, all of those guys. And there was crickets. Nobody at the meeting who are their representatives even knew about the Harvard Pilgrim study. And so it's become, you know, I'm so excited about this movie. I think it will be a great deal of information, like I said, for a long time to come. People will use this, and you know, there's just a lot of information that people can just be aware. But, you know, I feel like my job as a board member, a commissioner, is to change that dialogue of the commercial of like, well, we don't know about that, because I've read all of these Stratton studies, all these studies since I've been on this board, and we have a lot of work to do. And I think this is going to really raise a lot of questions and attention to this, because everyone can listen to those meetings live. It's like the ACIP, it's like, you know, the other meetings, and this board came out of the 1986 Act. So I'm really grateful for this. This is just perfect timing, like you said. Who could know that we would all be talking about COVID and having this? But all of us parents, you know, me 26 years ago, dealing with my daughter's injury, I hear the same thing. Was why would everyone want to, you know, do this to our children? People don't really understand what's going on, what's been going on a long time. Who's supporting World Health Organization? Who's telling, you know, who's donating all this money to you know, medical hospitals or colleges so they don't investigate these things that are killing and making our children sick? I'm just so grateful for this movie.
Thank you. You know, it was a tough one, and you're quite right. It's such a complex issue, but there is this deliberate ignorance. It's astonishing to me how little people know, and it's almost a deliberate ignorance, and it pervades the entire infrastructure. They really know nothing. And speaking from a position of ignorance, which is what they're doing, is a really dangerous place to be. And so part of the movie, part of the strategy of the movie is it's clearly a very complex subject. It's extraordinarily complex with the litigation, the legislation, the medical science, and how do you tell that story as a filmmaker without people going to sleep in the first 10 minutes? Even the most ardent fan of this subject really would struggle with that. And the way, and I came up with this idea, well, let's put it in the hands of the parents. Let's make this a dramatic movie about two parents who are expecting their baby, their first child, somewhat late in her reproductive life, and therefore very, very precious. And they are faced with this very question. They're having the same discussion that parents around the world, grandparents around the world, prospective parents around the world are having around the dinner table every night. What do we do about vaccination? We've heard all this controversy. What do we believe? And what they do is, and again, 95% of the couples that I've come across, it works this way, is the mother listens to this little voice inside her that says, there's something wrong here. There's something about this that isn't quite right. And of course, the husband initially is, get over it, forget about it, what about polio, and walks out of the room. Well, that's conflict, and you have to have conflict. Great, in any great movie, there's got to be a ton of conflict. And so there's conflict, as there is in many, many of these discussions within families every day. And so she goes on that journey. And she does effectively what everybody could do. And that is to get to the bottom of this whole issue, get to the truth. And in that process, she reveals to the audience the facts, the discovery from the litigation, the court cases that never made it before a jury because they were settled on the court steps. The original pertussis cases where we discover now for the first time the real reason that they had to get liability protection from Congress, why they lied to Congress, why they held the feet of Congress to the fire, blackmailed them because they could not face going before a jury because they would have been obliterated because of what they had done. And that is going to be seen by the public for the first time. But here we have this couple doing it. So now they are us. They are us, and now we care about them. We care about their journey. We care about the outcome because their outcome is our outcome. And suddenly we have a movie that people want to watch because they can relate to it. It's not just some talking head scenario where you have, you know, the sort of voice of God narration, as it's called, which would not have told this story in the way it needed to be told. So I hope it works. I believe it works. It was a big risk putting drama alongside documentary footage, but it seems to have come together very well. But the public will be the judge of that. In the meantime, people are in for an extraordinary insight into the true nature of the beast, the true evil, the lengths to which people will go to protect their own interests. And but as I say, the ultimate message is a very, very positive one. And once mothers in particular can take back from that man in the white coat that power that has been usurped from them, that inner wisdom, then this will change. I'll tell you a very interesting, I was sent an essay the other day from Samoa. You'll know that Samoa recently had an outbreak of measles, and for some strange reason, which the government won't investigate, there was a high mortality from measles in that outbreak, far higher than had ever been seen in Samoa for a long time. But I got an essay from a public health student, an excellent essay, and one quote from it really resonated, and it was about the history of measles in Samoa, and it was talking about a time when measles was a killer of children, as it was in the 1920s, for example, in the US and the UK. And it said that measles mortality and morbidity was lowest in those villages where there was a well-established and empowered women's committee. There, they kept the mortality and morbidity to a minimum. That wasn't public health, that wasn't vaccination, that wasn't doctors. That was the collective intelligence of mothers coming together and deciding what was best for their children. So this isn't an emotional argument. This is a survival imperative. This is why we're here on this earth right now, is because of that insight. Not because of doctors, not because of that white coat, not because of antibiotics or anything that we've done. No, something far, far more powerful that's evolved over thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So when people learn that, and when people take that back, and when husbands recognize that not only do their wives have this power, but they too themselves, if they explore it, have, dare I say it, that feminine side, not to the same extent, but nonetheless have it, then they will take it back individually and collectively, and this will change. So that is the takeaway message from this film.
How is no one clapping right now? I don't understand how no one's clapping right now. That you just dropped the most epically fabulous word bomb. And so we have to turn it back to you to this, because, you know, Karen and I have been doing this forever. And what I find is really heartbreaking, and I'm really excited to hear your answer to this. We go in, we dialogue, we show our respect for the people that we are dialoguing with. Like you just said, you're coming at it with such a vast repertoire of information. Like it's just, your dossier of knowledge is epic. So there's just so much to share. So when someone comes to you and says, you know, I'm definitely not going to get the hepatitis B because that seems silly, but I'm of course going to get DTaP and MMR. And, you know, we're just like, clunk. How do we dialogue? Because many women, not just men, are incredibly intimidated by that profound knowing, because it's overpowering. You have to stand up to a doctor. You have to stand up to authority. You have to find your voice. And it is, for many people, just the most difficult thing they've done in their lives. So how do we help them come to a place of knowing that their inner wisdom, coupled with the logic that they have been given, and, you know, the beautiful gift that is their immune system and their neuronal function and everything else that's happening, is a gift to them that they are supposed to share, and they are supposed to stand up for and advocate for? What do you say?
My tendency would not to be confrontational, but to, let's say, for example, to watch the film, take elements from that film, Karen, just as you took elements from your knowledge of VAERS, and go to the doctor and say, sure, vaccination, great, but just answer me this one question. What is your opinion on the integrity of the VAERS system? What percentage of adverse reactions does it truly capture based upon the science that's been done? You and I know he will say VAERS. There, how do you spell that? Okay. When he does that, you say to him, doctor, maybe we should have this conversation when you know a little bit more about it. Here's the reference. See you soon. Okay? So you don't confront them with, I'm not doing this, and therefore, oh, you're a bad parent and your child's going to die. You say, absolutely fine, you know, but I do have some questions before we go ahead with this. Let's start with this one. And the film raises all manner of questions which are supported by the literature. And for those documents that are not in the public domain, the legal discovery that shows the extraordinary fraud and corruption in the industry in relation to the original wholesale pertussis vaccine, which the act was really focused around originally, is take those documents, or have those documents, or have read them, and say, doctor, I'd be really interested in your opinion on the Deitch memo. The Deitch memo in relation to the original DPT vaccine safety study at UCLA.
Yes.
No silence. There will be a shocking silence. And you say, doctor, clearly you're not aware of this. May I leave this with you and see you in a month's time? And that is the way I would approach it.
And this even happens, I mean, because I've read a lot of studies about this, because we talk a lot at the ACCV board about the vaccine insert, VIS, the vaccine insert statements. And, you know, the National Vaccine Information Center, they basically are, you know, informed consent. But the doctors, when they're surveyed, they don't want to talk about it because this is, I can't remember which study I read, but they don't want to talk about vaccine injury because then people will get afraid to do it. And they also don't want to talk about it because it takes time. And then, the World Health Organization last December talked about, clearly there's only a half day of training of vaccine information, period. And so that's why these films are so important. And when I went through the vaccine injury compensation program, in 94, Lauren was injured. We settled in 98, but really they just kept, and my situation was so unique because they immediately agreed that Lauren was injured. And then they went on to postpone her award because they knew she was going to die. I mean, she was so sick at this time. And there was no internet, there was no Facebook, there was no Dr. Wakefield on, accessible. But, so I didn't even know that what they were doing is they were hiding our case. I didn't even understand. I knew it was complex, but because of my, this is like a typical parent because, my marriage was a mess. My daughter's seizing, my husband's drinking, and my life was falling apart. And all I heard was that this is great news that they've agreed that your daughter was injured. I didn't realize that they were hiding my baby without giving us due process. And it's huge because anyone would know if I called them news media. What have my little girl at that time, she was on oxygen in a wheelchair. She had just got trached, or this was before she got trached, but she looked very compromised. And I just knew that this was good that they were going to pay her. I didn't understand that they were hiding us from court, meeting in a private room. And even today, just like Josh Coleman, he never was compensated because he didn't know that there was a vaccine court, period. I mean, there's so much work there's so many levels of information that parents really need to hang on. And I like in the movie where the woman, I think she's pregnant, and she just is in the middle of the night. She's always thinking, like, all of a sudden, wait, no matter what they're doing, she's always going back to that, because I just hope that this raises awareness and more mothers and fathers ask those questions. And, I always say, at least do as much research as you do on your stroller or your car seat or your iPhone or your phone, about what you inject into your child. It's just, all of these topics need to be discussed thoroughly, opposed to just, it's a big pill to swallow, so I don't want to go there. Because it is a really, when you have this beautiful little baby, to think that people are making your child sick for profit, it's unconscionable, and it's so hard to believe that anyone would ever do that.
Yeah, there is, what the film portrays is, and Bobby Kennedy deals with this regularly, you think these companies can commit fraud after fraud after fraud and be indicted and be convicted felons and pay out billions of dollars on all their pharmaceuticals, but on vaccines, suddenly they discovered Jesus. They wouldn't do that to harm children in the interest of profit. Well, this film really destroys that illusion, that sad illusion. And you'll remember part of the story, and this is public knowledge, but has never got out widely, is what Wyeth did in respect of dispersing the hotspots and taking the fact that vaccines were made in batches, the DPT was made in batches, and batches were sent to the same location. And so if a batch was bad, if it was dangerous, if it was a hot lot, then you'd see adverse reactions in that location. They would be clustered in what is called a geographical cluster.
Right.
And this happened in Tennessee, 8 deaths following the same lot of vaccine. The state medical examiner saying, there's something going on here. This is not SIDS, something's happening. And it was identified as being the vaccine, and then that lot was withdrawn. So there was an advantage to this geographical clustering, is that it prevented, or it minimized perhaps, the number of deaths. So what Dr. Bernstein did from Wyeth, as we now know, was to come up with a strategy for avoiding liability by dividing up the lots into smaller amounts and sending them all over the country. So you might have a death in Tennessee and a death in Florida and a death in California, but no one would ever link it to that hot lot. So children would go on dying as a consequence of exposure to that lot. Now tell me, what is it about that that is not premeditated murder?
That was Lauren.
That was Lauren.
Lauren's lot was scattered all over. And And it's still, I talked to a pharmacist recently, he says they don't do that. I'm like, check, it's totally legal. They totally do that. The government protects the manufacturer, and they scatter the lots. Lauren's lot was in Hawaii and Chicago and all this stuff, and it was a hot lot, and it killed 10 surrounding deaths. But as we know, that there's only a, less than 1% reporting, especially back in '94. And I'm just so grateful this information is getting out. And obviously, I've experienced it. I see it all the time. These families are devastated. My one and only child, my marriage over, all of those things, it devastates. And I was the lucky one to go through court and be awarded. But so many people don't even know that there's an award program. And, we all know how difficult that is to get through that. So this is just critical, so critical.
Well, and just even the language, an award program. Like the fundamental language is so indicative of an incredibly corrupt system. And I think what's so powerful about what you guys are saying, I think probably everyone on this call knows the nature of it's a business model. We've been saying it forever, it's a business model. But trying to share that very, very real, very true information, like we used to say back in the day, it's like you feel like you're deflowering someone, like you just took away their mental virginity, because they are so completely, unbelievably baffled with it. And I do feel that this time in history, we are at a point where I've actually never experienced so many people coming forward saying to me, 10 years ago, I thought you were crazy. And now, I mean, I don't know, do I want this vaccine? Is this a good idea when this fantastic save the world's vaccine, COVID vaccine comes out? Should I get it? And my answer is always, if you're still asking me, you have a lot more research to do. Because Andy, I hate to go here, and I know you have to go shortly. I think you said 12:45 and we're at 12:37. Politically, how do you feel? Like, what is your sentiment on where we're going, what's appropriate? How do people align themselves ideologically, politically, if this is their passion?
Okay, well, I think there are two ways of answering that. One is that you must only vote for people who will act in the interests of your children and your children's welfare, and indeed your welfare and health freedom, and not those who will simply go along with their paymasters in the industry, the pharmaceutical industry lobbyists. Okay, so that is a given. And it doesn't matter what political party you vote for in that respect, as long as they will do that. Now, the stated policy of the Democrats is to go for mandatory vaccination, to minimize medical exemptions, to remove any other exemption, and to force vaccination, and to have a federal mandate, not just a state by state policy, but a federal mandate that usurps all of those state policies. So if that's where you want to go, good luck to you. Okay, but that's what the Democrats' stated intention is. They take a lot of money from the industry, they're in bed with the industry, and that is what they want. And that leaves only one party, who have in all state legislatures represented the interests of health freedom rather than mandatory vaccination. It's always been divided on political grounds. That's just a quirk of where we are right now. But that's where we are. And so you have to make your decision accordingly. If this issue is fundamental to you, if this is the most important thing of all, then that's the way you're going to have to vote, because nothing else matters. If 1 in 2 children has autism by 2032, you don't have a foreign policy, you don't have a police force, you don't have a standing army, nobody cares about you in the world because you are irrelevant. There's no economy, nothing. So if you want America to remain important, central to the success and the future of the world, then you have got to vote accordingly. And that is to protect the future, and that is the children.
Yes.
That is as simple as it gets.
Yes. How do you recommend people go about educating themselves in terms of understanding these very delineating characteristics? Of course, we read public policy now. I would never have read public policy had I not had an impacted child. I would have gone about my business doing what most people do, you know, posting pictures on Instagram, spending obscene amounts of time, you know, obsessing about paint colors, normal life, right? For a lot of people, there's just, for those who remain asleep and not impacted, which we know, like you said, the 2032 stat's been out forever in our community. It's scientifically verifiable, it's statistically valid. This is happening. How do you recommend people consume their media, or how do you recommend that they get access to the information that's viable?
Again, I would overly promoting the film. I think what the purpose of making a film was to condense all of this information down into an easily accessible 2-hour movie that you can watch and you go, right, wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. There's a document I need to read, etc., etc. So this is my attempt to not only entertain, but educate people about this important subject. Use it as a template. Vaxxed, as you know, had an extraordinary effect in that it provided for the first time an insight into what the workings of the Vaccine Safety Office at the CDC, what they were really doing, based upon the documentary evidence, not just Thompson's word, here are the facts. And so use that information, take from it what you want, and then in the same way that you need to confront your doctors about this, give me your opinion on this before we go any further, is to confront your legislators as well. Here are the facts. Have you seen this? How will you vote on this issue going forward? And if they say, we're going to vote for mandatory vaccination, there's your decision.
Yes, yes. Now, how can people have access to the film?
Right, 1986theact.com, 1986theact.com. Go there, 2 minutes past midnight. Tomorrow it's available online, and yeah, that's where you can go to go. 1986theact.com.
Andy, I want to ask a question. Thank you for that, because that was going to be one of my questions. But I want to ask you, the question from Kelly Lars is saying, will the movie bring about change to VAERS and National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program and classification as biologics? But I also want to let you know that I have people, Diane Soucy is doing an amazing event October 6th in Philadelphia. It's a Vias for Vaccine event. Josh will be there. I'll be there. She would like to talk to you about that. How do people contact you? I'm sure you're going to be very, very busy doing promoting and speaking and all of that. How do people contact you if they want you to be at their event, or if they want to host an event to show the movie?
Okay, info@seventhchakrafilms.com. So
okay, say that again.
Info@7th chakra, CHARKA films.com. And therefore, and that people can get in touch with me. And is this film going to change these things? No, it's going to start the process of change, or continue the existing process of change. It's the people, it's you, it's the people watching the film who then exact that change by confronting your doctors, confronting your politicians, getting informed. So use the film. The film alone is just a condensation of the information into a 2-hour movie, but use it. Use it to your advantage to make change happen.
Thank you. I think we're all very, very excited. I know you need to go in 2 minutes, but we're going to keep this going till the end of the hour. I'm super grateful for this opportunity that you've given me, and your channel. Tell us about it. I think that your channel's on Thursday, right? And then I'm actually going to be on your show this Thursday. How do people hear that?
On the podcast, it's the Andy Wakefield podcast.
Okay.
Go to Andy Wakefield podcast. I think it's all on all the standard streaming for podcasts. I wish I knew what they were. I wish I could quote them, but I can't. Laurie can. So, yeah, at the Andy Wakefield podcast, or Andy Wakefield podcast. And Lisa, it's lovely to see you again as well. Haven't seen you for a very long time.
Thank you for standing up for.
Karen, thank you so much.
You validate us, you stand up for us, you've given us a voice, and you've stuck with the truth. And all of us mothers, we've needed that for a very long time. So grateful.
Yes, I love the beautiful, extraordinary, elegant evolution of your message, and it's an exciting time to be alive. So thank you for being that person who's doing the work. We're very grateful for you.
Well, I'm grateful for you too. So thank you very much.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye, guys. Bye-bye.
Anybody have any questions or want to talk about Dr. Andy's discussion or his film, or because Karen was fortunate enough to have a pre-screening?
Okay, so I see some questions. So first of all, I thought that was lovely. I'm really, really grateful that he's taken the time. I know that he had to get off early because he's doing another interview. So thanks, Drew, for being there. And Diane, so now you know how to get in touch with Andy. Diane Southey's doing an amazing event in Philadelphia, October 4th. Is it 4th or maybe it's 4th? Diane, where are you at? Anyway, so you guys can unmute yourself and ask a question, or we can talk about what's going to happen next week. Patricia, you're waving, but you're very quiet.
What is happening next week?
Next week, okay, so
Oh,
Dr. Judy, so I'm super excited to say that I started reading The Plague of Corruption last night. I mean, I've had her other book, and I started it, and it was a little tough on my brain, which is not a surprise. I mean, I met Dr. Judy like 5 years ago, and at the Autism One conference, and it was actually like 2 weeks before Dr. Bradstreet was murdered. So we all sat, Dr. Bradstreet, Dr. Judy, I think David Steffen actually was there too, and we were just sitting around at the end of the conference. But this book, I just read the foreword from RFK Jr., and I'm just like highlighting the whole thing. It's full of information. It's very interesting. It's got the drama that kind of keeps you, it's just unbelievable that this is happening in real life, and the way they treated her and the way they've tried to make her go away. And her courage and commitment to the truth. I'll tell you that she lives like 5 minutes from where I'm staying right now. And we had happy hour. I've had happy hour with her twice. And she just gets kicked out of any bar that makes her wear a mask. And she's just like, I'm not a hypocrite. I will go to jail. I don't care. I'm standing up for people. And her heart is real. Her truth is there. And I'm really excited to have her next week. So I'm going to pick her up at her house, and then I'm going to bring her here, and then we're going to be together. And so LJ, I haven't even told you LJ yet. So yeah, so we're going to be in the same room together, and then LJ is going to be in Florida, but I'll be in Florida soon. Anyways, so super excited. So you can think about your questions for Dr. Judy. And you know, over the years, I think Candace S. Dave, who I love, had a lot to do with getting Judy to kind of caveman style her presentations, because she's so smart, and you know, she's just a simple, honest, faithful, amazing woman who is standing up and cares about the future of our children and our children. And you know, get this book and check in next week. It's going to be awesome.
So excited. I feel like she is just, I don't even have words. Like I literally, my whole body right now is just like, it's going to be incredible. People need this. They're ready. Everyone's ready. It's not just our community anymore. I got a ton of PMs yesterday about Andy being on the show. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know these people that aren't like these people, you know, are really interested in that. So I'm excited to get the link up and get everything going. And I mean, this is a good time to be alive. I hope everyone is feeling that way.
I remember when I first met Andy, it was, and I'm like a big cynic about everybody. I kind of was like,
you're so secretive about it. You never tell anybody.
I'm married. I was at the time married to a British man, and I'm just like, oh, he's handsome, and of course his accent, and oh yeah, and then you know, and then you meet him, and there's like what, 50, 100 women just flocking, and you know, everybody had his book, but he just stood up for us at a time that no one was standing up for us parents. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and I kind of got into autism. Lauren was never diagnosed as autism because she was so catastrophically injured. She didn't make it to that autism. That would have been like a bump up for her in her health. But I've just seen him for, like probably 10 years. And, doing the Alex thing, which I remember, LJ, when you posted at one point, you just said, please don't talk to me anymore about Alex because my heart is breaking. I mean, that was such a tough story, but it was a true story, unpopular story. And then, of course, the vax thing, Lauren ended up in it. And he called me and he said, do you mind if we use the video of Lauren seizing? And I was like, of course not. I'm totally supportive. And that was really controversial to put it in vax because it was too dramatic. And so actually, he's put Lauren seizing in a trailer. And I just think it's really interesting how Lauren just kind of does what she does from where she's at, And so that's why I got to see the movie early because,
she's a spirit to contend with, that one.
Yeah. So, and who knows what's happening next, but these conversations, and parents being awake because I just became a grandmother. My daughter's best friend, Lauren's best friend, Sarah, just had a baby on Sunday. And, I'm just so glad she's awake. And I'm just like, you just tell, Taylor to watch that baby and don't let his eyes, that's his job, because nobody could be in with her because of COVID. So I can't see the baby. But, just seeing this beautiful picture that's now on my phone screensaver, it's just these precious babies and these parents in the very beginning. And, to have that taken for profit, it's gut wrenching. And that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Amen.
When will you see the baby, Kain?
Pardon?
When will you see the baby?
I have no idea.
Is she still in the hospital?
She's still in the hospital, and we're not sure about the COVID. We're not just sure about, I just said to her, just have the baby and we'll just deal with it. She's nervous. She said to me, that they were being very cautious after the baby's born.
Could you imagine the pressure of having a baby now and also being, because in the US we do hepatitis B, like they come out the chute and we're shooting them up with hepatitis B and vitamin K. So could you imagine the pressure of like resisting right now when, I give her so much credit.
Never mind the existential threat of everything that's going on, and you're bringing a new life into this crazy world that we're in at the moment. That's got to be terrifying as well, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. We didn't have to have these conversations because we didn't have this information when I was delivering. Lauren would be 26 and, it wasn't talked about. You just go in and do the good mommy thing and follow. And now I think it's a huge divide with, if you're anti-vaxxers, your kids can't play with other parents. Parents' kids. This is a huge divide. Obviously it's like you said, LJ, it's a political divide, and it's becoming such a political divide. We were we were shopping with Sharon Winters and we got kicked out of so many places that wouldn't let us in, and they wanted us to use hand sanitizer to walk in at San Diego area, and we're like, no. And then if you go into some of the shops, like the thrift shops, I'm a big thrift shopper, you can't return it, you can't touch it, you can't try it on, and it's just like, okay, and you have to wear a mask. It's like crazy. And so this woman, we sat there at this lovely little French cafe, and she got really mad. She goes, who are you supporting, and who are you supporting? And we said, well, we're supporting for Trump regarding the whole vaccine issue and other things going on. She just put her mask on and walked away. I have to leave. And it was just like, because you know what? This same woman was home for 3 months. She has not left her house in 3 months. So she has to stand up for what she's believing and what's keeping her isolated. This is such a huge divide.
Well, and I want to say this too. I'm gonna skip back because we covered so many topics in reference to Andy's film, and to what you're saying. I promise I'll tie it all around. When everything was happening with Dorothy, and we obviously all shifted gears to focus on Alex because that was way more of an issue. I had the privilege of all of the news anchors came because of the prowess of one family friend. They were like, oh, LJ, we'd love to interview you about all of this. Tell us, you know, what really happened. And we had just written the book, The Thinking Moms Revolution. And all of the anchors who heard the story unanimously said, if I put you on the news and I link you to this death when you have just written this book that is going to really skyrocket this issue, you are going to, I'm going to associate you with something, and it's going to be very negative, and it's basically going to be the death of the book and the death of your career. What career is there? This isn't a career, this is truth. And I think it's so amazing that everything that he said, everything that Andy said today, and everything that you're talking about right now, Karen, it really is the fundamental, what do you do in that moment with the knowledge that you have? What do you do in that moment to say, I am refusing hepatitis B, or I am not wearing this mask, or, it is really that simple. I understand that it's a complex issue, but I feel like we make it more complex because it really is an issue, as we've talked about multiple times on our late night phone calls, of civil liberties. It's a matter of us saying no.
And and that's very intimidating. And even, I mean, I can be pretty much an ass. And I've been arguing with doctors and lawyers and all kinds of people for a very long time. And then I'm very different now, obviously, than I was 26 years ago. And that's a whole other hour. But I think it is very intimidating. And I like how they always put those little 20-year-old innocent people at the beginning. I go out a lot. And they put those 20-year-old kids at the, with their little piece of paper, and they're kind of, okay, you can't go in, and like, I don't want to argue with that person, but I also want to stand up for my rights. I also want to say a couple things because we're getting notes. Diane Saucy is correcting me. It's 10-4 in Philadelphia, and check with her. There's a link here. I don't know if everyone can see it. Also, I love that. Yes, I'm super excited about Dr. Judy, but I also want to say Drew says that her daughter-in-law is being asked to wear a mask during labor, which I think that's a whole other hour we need to have. That's.
Oh, I responded privately.
Oh, okay. That's. I can't. I don't even know. But then I also want to say to Jackie. Hi, Jackie. I just sent you 2 more books, and she's doing an event in Michigan for the Vaccine Awareness Walk event, October 10th. So contact her. And, you guys, when you have your events, you can go to Tightrope. I know we still don't have a lot of people, but we do have a YouTube channel that we put these videos up, and we are trying to raise awareness about that. And then I'm going to be interviewed with Andy on Thursday at 4. I'll be sharing that with.
We appreciate you, Karen. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for the books.
Of course. I wish I could just be there. I would love to be there.
I wish you could be there, but unfortunately Michigan for Vaccine Choice doesn't have a ton of money to bring everybody in that we would love, but we appreciate having your books for people.
Absolutely. And if I could, I'm not sure, like I'm really excited to go to Philadelphia. I've never been. My dad was born in Michigan.
I cannot wait for you to come. I can't wait for you to get here.
I'm very excited. Well, Sharon Winters is from, I think she was Miss Philadelphia or something.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm doing my best to get her there, and she's an amazing advocate. And she's Patricia. Of course, I tell everybody about you, Patricia, and your stand and your advocacy. But Sharon reminded me, and Dr. Judy reminded me very much of Patricia. Like, Sharon just constantly is talking to strangers and bringing it up every time she can, and that's how the woman got so mad she had to leave the restaurant. But this is what we do. Every little bit of our voices, they're heard. And when the woman left at this cafe, I felt like she was really angry, but her friend actually was totally on our side, which is kind of funny. But I think that there was a seed planted. There's a
always.
Planted.
I don't think you breathe without a seed being planted, Karen Kain.
I don't know. I feel like I get inspired with Patricia. I get inspired, like Sharon. She just is constantly, you shouldn't wear that mask. And even we were at Las Brisas, and it was such a mess. Like, they wanted to sit us in Las Brisas, which is a beautiful place in Laguna Beach, looking over the ocean. I mean, it's the best part of California. And so they put us in a parking lot because you can't sit in the restaurant. And it's like lobster for $60. I'm like, I don't want to spend like $60 on an entree and sit in the parking lot. Like, we went back in the bar. But it's like that whole, I get the negative connotation about being out and being ridiculed. You gotta have a mask, you gotta put it on. And she used the medical card. So I'm learning, like, if one person has a medical card, they'll let them in with a group. And if both people, they'll kind of kick us out. So that kind of we are experiencing. But the woman that was seating us, she was very, very sweet, very kind. She came up later. She goes, can I take a picture of your medical card that Dr. Judy gave us? So we'll be talking about medical cards. And so that was very interesting. And we're just telling her, don't wear the mask. She's like, I have to because it's my job. But, I'm just waiting for people to start passing out. I just see people like on their bikes and walking and jogging with their masks on.
That is such a fear for me when school starts, Karen. I can't even think about it. Yeah. Because Michigan just put out their plan for the fall, and the plan is for 6th to 12th grades to wear them all day long. Obviously mine will not, but it's such a fear what's going to happen to these kids.
What's provocative about that, though, and what I find fascinating, because my son Noah just went back to summer camp. This is his second day. And the first day, everyone was, we must. Today, everyone's got it under their chin. The reality is it's an unattainable circumstance that they are trying to proliferate. It is unattainable. You can't breathe. They can't see your face when you're talking. I couldn't be educated if I couldn't read someone's facial expressions. Eyes only give me so much. So I think I understand your fear, but I also feel like the reality of this situation is the provocative things that Andy was talking about today. This intuition is going to come out in our kids, I think. I think they are going to reach a point where they're like, I know what my family's like. I know what I've lived. I'm not, this isn't, it's so funny because Noah got off the bus yesterday and it was around his chin and he handed it to me and he was just cracking up. He just handed it to me and he was like, and I was like, and I really struggled philosophically with, because Karen and I, we must talk about this like 500 times a day, from the standpoint of, how different it is in different states and the way it's being enforced and the way that you're made to feel when you're out in public. But
if I may,
that's a big part of it too, is that people are just so nasty. And I think, being in Michigan where our governor is so pro mask and it's okay to be nasty if you're not wearing one, that's part of our struggle, is that people have got this mentality that it's okay to be rude, and the kids are doing it because their parents are doing it. So it's going to cause, as an advocate, I'm prepared to write all kinds of complaints come fall. I just know it's going to happen. As a mom to a child who already gets bullied and already gets attacked because of disabilities, it's upsetting, but he's still not going to wear a mask. But it's just, my concern is even with the other kids who I know that are going to suffer, if not, immediate consequences due to the mask wearing, then long-term consequences due to the mask wearing. So I just have all kinds of concerns.
If I may interject real quick. Here in Pennsylvania, Governor Wolf, they just released the announcement today that he is now saying, he's made masking outdoors. The moment you leave your house, you have to mask. The minute you leave the house. I could go on for days, but my point being, he just released a statement today stating that schools, masking will be mandatory from ages 2 and up, and that they may be mandatory until a vaccine is available.
If I can just interject really quickly?
Sure.
Christine, I would really like for everybody in a state whose governor is running that state that way to go to KrisanneHall.com. We will post it. I will post it on my page, and I'll put it on my PubFig page, and I'll put it on Tightrope Tuesday. Go to KrisanneHall.com. That's illegal. It is illegal. It's a violation.
What they're trying to do is, we've got legislators here who are trying to, they put forth bills to explain, you cannot you can't do that. It's not a law. You know what I mean? Like, but
what I understand 100% what you're saying, and what it's going to boil down to is the individual person saying this is a violation of my civil liberties and I will not do it. It is revolution. It is revolution. It's what's going to happen. But if the people don't stand up, because I think what we hear a ton, and I know we're going over and I got to go get Noah off the bus, but I understand and hear your frustration across the board that it's the most jacked up thing on the planet. But that is what it's going to boil down to. And you're the one doing it. You're the one making it happen. Like from the standpoint of helping people learn and evolve. But I mean.
So is it Chris, how do you spell it? CHRISANN hall.com?
Yeah, it's KR, I will actually, hold on one second, let me grab it.
Okay, I can type it while you're there and then put it on.
Yeah, KrisanneHall.com. And she does this out of her, she's an attorney. And she focuses entirely on our constitutional rights. Krisanne Hall, yeah, it's
Yeah, I have filed OCR complaints in the past, and I'll do it again. I have no doubt that there's going to be a lot, and it's going to come down to the lawsuits. No, for sure.
Yes.
And you know, I think. Wait, let's do one thing. Okay, Krisanne, can you spell that? Because I want to talk about that.
Somebody already posted it. I think I found it. Yep, KrisanneHall.com. This is what it looks like. This is what her site looks like.
Okay, KRIS. Okay.
ANNE Hall.
I don't want to do privately. Okay, I want to do. Okay, but Jackie, like what I think would be great is that if you could. Sorry, I'm multitasking. To everyone, I want everybody to get this. Okay, so but I think that what's really important, because so many people haven't written that letter, haven't taken the time. So if you post your letter, and get all your parents, I'm sure you know parents that are going to school, their kids are going to school with your kids, and like LJ was just saying, the more voices, the better, because once you stand up, you're giving someone else permission to stand up. And I think that's the way we are as humans. If she's going to say, then I'll stand there, and then maybe they'll stand behind you, but then maybe they'll be standing beside you, and maybe they'll be standing in front of you next time. But showing the letter, showing the address, dummy it up. I always say caveman style, letting people know how to do it, what to do, and just how easy it is.
Great. Excellent.
Amen.
Amen. Enforcing these laws, are they fining people for not wearing a mask, or how are they enforcing it?
They are fining people in Pennsylvania. They are. They threw me out of a store, and I said I had a medical condition, and they threw me out of a store.
Oh, I hope you documented all of that. That is a violation of your constitutional rights.
I agree, but I mean, you should see the heat. Well, you guys know, you got to pretend to have very thick skin. You just got to keep being that person. I went back in to show her the law, to show her the order, and she still said, I don't care. And she threw me out in front of a store full of people.
You know what? The same has happened to me. I've been thrown out a ton of times. I've been obviously unfriended and rejected a ton of times, but it's very much in Ventura. It's like, if you don't wear a mask, it can be $1,000 fine. It's literally impossible.
$1,000 fine?
Up to $1,000 fine. It's impossible to go into a grocery store. It's almost every business that I've been in California, you cannot get in because they have these little kids. They're like 20, and they stand in front, and they look like afraid, and they stand there with their kids, and they talk to you before you get in. But even business owners, and like I said on Sunday, they wanted us to put hand sanitizer to come in. And I was like, okay, now
it's crazy.
But we
ignorance.
In the UK, it's not as bad in the UK yet, but it's heading that way, isn't it, Kate? You can see it slowly creeping in, but we're always about a month behind America anyway. But you can see it slowly creeping in. They're enforcing masks on public transport, and more and more masks are on the streets all the time. So I just know that it's going to head the same way as America's going. But I would absolutely refuse to wear one. I'm just simply not going to put one on. I think it's symbolic. It's symbolic of slavery. I'll not wear one, and I don't care what they do. They can throw me in jail. I'm not wearing it. I'm not.
That's why I talk about you to Dr. Judy. And I mean, I have to say, I put one on. I put one on in the grocery store. I usually will pull it down. I have, you know, it's like right now to get to do grocery shopping, you have to have one on, period.
Well,
I found the medical card and I can get away with that, but it's 50-50. I don't even know if it's 50-50. I know that if there's like a group of people when you go to a restaurant, you have to walk in with a mask. This is the stupidest shit ever. Then you sit down and then you can take your mask off. But if you go to the bathroom, they'll say, you know, put on your mask. And
That's how it is here too, yeah.
And my favorite meme of all time, this one. This is a mask. This is a mind control device.
Of course it is, yeah. Absolutely.
Totally. And you know, and I think that we need to keep, and I'm super over the whole mask issue because I was complaining about this in March. I have a dear friend there's a conversation on my wall, and you know, and she said, and I love this woman, she said, I just can't believe the whole world has this agenda. And so I'm up all night thinking about my reply, because that's the point. People don't understand. And one of my old roommates, she said, well, you're just looking at the bigger picture. But I just feel like, you know, we're standing up and we're raising our voice for everything, but it is not an actual law in California. And I think the same with Michigan, Jackie. It's not actually a law. They're just saying it. So
They're just saying it.
The problem is the individual stores are fighting it. I mean, I don't go anywhere that requires it anyway, and I don't take my boys out right now anyway because they're immunocompromised and they wouldn't survive a mask, and so I just don't do it. But I'm the same way as you, Lucy. I just would not. I just won't wear it out in public. I don't wear it. But my concern obviously is with the places like when school comes in and stuff like that. But I just mostly stay home.
You know, there's another thing too that, you know, I want to support small businesses. And the guy, you know, I was in this business last week, and he says you have to have a mask. And it was a spiritual shop, and I'm like, you're kidding me. And he goes, no, he goes, they've already been in here. Because, you know, I do want to support small businesses because I don't want to order on Amazon. And of course, like Jeff Bezos is loving this, you know, we have to order everything from Amazon. But and so these small businesses are at threat for being whatever, fined or shut down. And, you know, these restaurants, they're saying, like 2 weeks ago when I was out with Sharon in the Valley, they're saying that you have to order food. So you can't just come in and order a cocktail. You actually have to order food. So there's a lot of laws. And so, you know, that's kind of the tricky part, isn't it? You know, I want to support a business so I can stay open.
And that's why they're doing it. They're afraid they're going to be shut down if they let people in without their mask on.
So we have a lot of work to do.
I'm sorry to do this, but I have to go get my son, and I'm recording.
Okay.
Or else everybody else can do it.
Thanks to everybody who was on the call. We'll put this on. This will be.
Thank you.
As soon as possible.
Thank you.
Okay. Cheers. Cheers. Cheers.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks, okay.
Bye.
Bye, beautiful people. If yes, then you'll receive an email notification when the cloud recording is. Eyeglasses.